Can you get me some?
I already got it.
Oh, can you get me water?
Oh, right there.
Oh, it's right here? Oh, great. There's no music cue or anything. All right, shall we start now? Hi, I'm Tom Smidalka. You got a phonetic spelling of my name up there anyway. I'm the product manager for QuickTime for Windows. And I guess I hear it's a tradition at WWDC every year to introduce a new product manager for QuickTime for Windows, so we'll see how this one goes. Up on stage with me is Paul Charlton, who's the lead QuickTime for Windows engineer, Peter Hottie, who's the lead QuickTime engineer, and how you dance with two leads, I don't know, but we managed to figure it out somehow, and also Tony Knight, who's our applications engineer. I kind of want to change the what we're talking about here in a way. I want to call it making Microsoft work for you, as opposed to you working for them. I've spent most of my career, I guess, in the computer industry working on x86 platforms and working with Microsoft. And there are basically three ways that you can do an application for Windows. One is to do exactly what Microsoft tells you to do. This is not a very successful program. The second thing is to do what Microsoft tells you to do, but not in the way that they tell you to do it. And if you can grasp that, then you're on your way to having a very successful program. The third way is to basically do whatever the hell you want, no matter what Microsoft says. And that is, I think, probably one of the best ways to assuring success of your program. And the interesting thing to note is that DCI 2.0, how many people here are familiar with that, DCI 2.0? For some reason, Microsoft is calling it Quick Draw. I don't know why they don't like the name DCI anymore. Direct Draw, right? That is really an exceptional piece of work. It's something that Microsoft put together basically because they knew that all these developers were doing whatever the hell they wanted anyway and not doing what they told them. So they put together this piece of software, and it's really, really good. I think Windows 95 is a really, really great platform. And talk to me tomorrow and see if I still have a job. But it's true, and there are a lot of reasons why you should be looking at this very seriously. I'm going to give you, oops, where did my other slide go? Yes, okay. My short history of multimedia. It started with DOS, and went to Windows, and I'm talking about 80% of the people that are out there, okay? Windows was really cool, and then Creative Labs came up with a Sound Blaster card, and all of a sudden you got sound, and so I've got my spreadsheets, and I've got sound, and I can play my DOS games. And then something really phenomenal happened. It was called Video for Windows. And I remember seeing it for the first time. I was working with ATI Technologies then, and we were working with Microsoft and Intel. And I don't know if any of you remember it. This was about 4 or 5 years ago, this video of Bill Gates going, digital video is the future type of thing. And I went, wow, this is incredible. And I talked to a friend of mine who had a Mac, and he said, well, that's no big deal. And I said, but you don't understand. I'm doing this on my business machine. I don't have to go out and buy a Mac to do this. So if you really want to be successful, I think you have to really seriously look at that platform and understand how multimedia has developed there. You know, without meaning to be insulting, is anyone from Microsoft out here? 1 or 2 people? No? it's Microsoft Multimedia is multimedia for accountants, all right? I mean, I've got my business computer, right, where I do my spreadsheets, and we'll put in a sound card, and we'll add a little more memory, and we'll add some speakers, and we'll put in some digital video, and wow, you know, there's something moving, and I can hear it, and it is more or less happening at the same time. It's fundamental, but it's growing. Microsoft realizes that there's a lot of potential there, and the market is huge. The market is huge. The market is huge, okay? So what we're finding now, too, is users, when they're making purchases of computers, they're not buying something because of the operating system. I mean, people used to have arguments about operating systems. I guess, you know, in some esoteric cafes, some people still do. And then people started looking at applications and what can an application do for me, or what can an application suite do for me. But right now, the key criterion when someone's making a purchasing decision is, if I have this multimedia app, I want to put it in and I want it to run. And I don't want to call anyone, I don't want to have to put it in a second time. And so what you're finding is this new thing that I'm calling a multimedia environment. The key factor in making someone purchase a program today is whether or not he has the proper multimedia environment. Apple has the expertise in that. I mean, we essentially invented it. So QuickTime is delivering that, and we're going to show you today how to take it further cross-platform. And so with QuickTime 2.1 and with further versions of QuickTime, QuickTime for Windows, as we go into this major development phase at Apple to bring QuickTime cross-platform, is essentially three things: ease of use for the end user, ease of development for you, and true cross-platform delivery. That is, being able to be optimal on as many different operating systems as possible. So how transparent are you and how clean? I'm sure you're all familiar with some of the minor problems we've had with previous versions of QuickTime for Windows, installing and reinstalling versions over one another. 2.1 has a much, much cleaner install, and its install, it's a lot easier for you to integrate into your own application, so it's basically invisible. We're going to be talking further a little about control panel. So I think that the big difference, and especially since I've started at Apple here, and noticing the sort of the space that people are in when programmers are making sure that they're compatible with all the hardware. There's a hell of a lot more hardware on Windows platforms and different types of hardware and different qualities of hardware than you find in the Mac environment. So with a lot of games, even with DOS games and Windows games, you find that you or your support people are asking the end user over the telephone to edit their win.ini file. And this is a major headache, and it's enough for a lot of people to take their program back to the store and ask for the money back. So one of the things that we're doing is we're taking some very distinct steps in making that even easier for the customer to use. A control panel will give them very easy to use buttons that you can very easily talk them through rather than have them to go and edit files, which scares the bejesus out of a lot of people when you even suggest that. Ease of development. The goal is that wherever you go, there you are. I mean, if you were developing, say, a Sega game, you know the hardware that's out there, you know that anyone that buys your Sega game is going to have this type of a performance, is going to have that type of a reaction. You just don't know that when you're on Windows because of all the variables that are involved. So we're working right now to make sure that you'll have that confidence that whether the purchaser has a Pentium or a 386, whether they have a 16-bit sound card or an 8-bit sound card, whether they have a graphic accelerator or not, that they will get the optimal interaction that you are telling them they are buying. 2.1 will do this, first of all, by having more optimized graphics and sound hardware drivers. Because we're doing it two ways. I mean, some of the stuff we're doing in-house, but we have a lot of companies such as ATI, Matrox, S3, saying that, and Cirrus, that are so interested in QuickTime that they're doing this work themselves, because we feel that the best person to optimize a driver for hardware are the people that design the hardware themselves. So until we get that all in line, we also have a backup. 2.1 will support DCI, okay? All right. In addition, there's support not only for you, but support for the end users. We've hired, I don't know, I'm wondering if I can embarrass a couple of people here. Kent Sandvik and Rand Giffen, are they here? Oh, there's one of them, okay. That's Rand Crippen, sorry. He's our new developer support engineer who's going to be focusing solely on QuickTime for Windows. And Kent is another one, so we're slowly building up that organization. So you'll have a lot quicker access to dealing with cross-platform problems. In the same respect, end users, our support group in Austin is being trained on what Windows is. And so, you know, we'll be able to give them some answers. The strange thing is that we found that the average Windows user knows a lot more about their computer than the average Mac user. And my little dig at Mac people here is that Mac people seem to be proud of the fact that they really don't know what their hardware does. But that the support is slowly being built up, so you know that when you deliver a Windows application and there is a problem, that you'll have some knowledgeable people here that will be able to give your end users some intelligent answers. I don't know, have they announced the AMP Plus program as well yet? They have? Okay. Take advantage of this. This is great. I mean, it's really the first time that cross-platform people can get involved in AMP, where you get your mailings plus you get, I think it's 10 support calls or 10 questions that we guarantee we will answer and work through the problems for you. So there's now a formal support program for people that are developing cross-platform, which we never had before. And we also have a website, quicktime.apple.com, where you can get a lot of information too. True cross-platform delivery. You know, it's like, if you do listen to Microsoft, it's sort of like playing Let's Make a Deal. They're saying, you know, forget about everything, Windows 95, that's where you got to go. Well, there are two things you have to know. One is that, yes, you should be on Windows 95, but when and how much of your resources should you be putting into that. The whole idea of QuickTime 2.1 is that it gives you the option to deliver not only on Windows 3.1 and Windows 95, but Windows NT as well. So 2.1 will have Win32 support in it. And we're organizing a beta program right now. So either, if you want to get involved in that, drop me your card, or link me at Tom C, or email tomc@apple.com to make sure that we can get you into that program, because we want as much feedback as possible. We're not getting that much cooperation from Microsoft for some strange reason. I guess that's basically the basic overview. I'll take some questions later, and right now I'll introduce Paul Charlton, who's our lead QuickTime for Windows engineer. Paul?
But we'll see how I do here. So basically, I'm like the lead engineer for QuickTime for Windows, and I think like QuickTime is really cool technology that you should be taking advantage of. We deliver solutions on Macintosh and Windows, and we also have SGI and some other platforms coming on board. But basically, the first question that you should answer for yourselves is like, who is your customer? I mean, what are your design constraints, and what do you want your presentation to be like? You need to know those sort of things in advance so that you can like make some really good decisions about the quality of the production that you're going to put together. Don't set your sights too high for an entry-level PC. Set your expectations correctly. Basically, so for QuickTime for Windows, the minimum CPU is a 38620. We will run on that. People may not be as excited about presentations on a 38620 as they are on a 486 or a Pentium, but you can deliver good content on that platform. And there are a lot of those machines still out there being used every day. For 48625, we can do what I consider fairly excellent presentation quality videos, but it takes some work. And so what I was going to do today is I'm going to go over the process of once you've decided like what you want your production to be and your presentation to be, how you can actually create your content to get that to your end users and your customers. I've heard a lot of people here say like we do really cool demos and really great videos for this show, and they're wondering how we do them. So I'm going to get a bit into that, like how we go through our process of making our videos and ensuring reasonable quality and high standards on a medium range machine now, which is a 48625. So another design constraint that you have to consider is like the installed base that you're selling into is like their CD-ROM capabilities. Not everyone out there has a double-speed CD-ROM. Last I checked, there was about 15% of the user base that was still using single-speed CD-ROMs on PCs. I mean, that number is diminishing all the time, but it may be a market that you want to address with your application, and there's some special considerations when you're making your movies to be successful delivering content to those folks. And another thing to note is with the PC market, I mean, you can always go out and find a PC that will do really good 2x data rates for your video at 300K per second, but that's not what you're going to find when you actually start selling into your customer base. A lot of these guys, they have a 2x CD-ROM, and it can only do 200K per second under DOS Windows and combination because of various hardware and driver constraints. And so basically, like if you make a decision to use a higher data rate, you're cutting off part of your market that you may not want to cut off. So the next slide was other constraints to consider are like how much RAM does a user have, and like how much does QuickTime need? Basically, I'm not going to recommend delivering an application from an environment like Director on a 4 megabyte Windows machine. I mean, it can be done, but it's pretty hard. I mean, you're going to get a lot of tech support calls as to how do I configure my machine to actually run your app. QuickTime itself needs some memory footprint of about 500K to do a 320 by 240 movie on an 8-bit graphics adapter. And that's reasonably small. I mean, it needs 500K of physical memory. So basically, if someone has overcommitted the resources on their system and they're using virtual memory and paging and things like that, QuickTime might not be successful on their machine because someone else is using the memory resources. So that's another consideration. I mean, if you want to do a good app and deliver it on a 4 megabyte machine, you're going to have to do a lot of work up front with your programming staff. I mean, you're going to have to find a really good C programmer and lock them in a room for a long time. And you can actually deliver really good quality on a 4 meg machine, but it's not easy. So that's just another consideration. RAM is pretty cheap. I mean, one thing to recommend would be to get customers to upgrade and be aware of these constraints when you're on your product packaging and things like that. And the other consideration is like most of the PC base out there, they may have graphics cards that are doing 16 and 24 and 32-bit graphics, but the typical majority of them that I've seen personally are running 256 colors. So it's like you need to design your movie to look good on those machines. You don't want to like go out and have all these customers reconfigure all their hardware just for your application. Another consideration is the bus type, like what type of cards can they put in their machine for video cards. Someone with an ISA bus is not going to get as good a quality video as someone who has a PCI bus video card. And right now, I mean, a lot of the machines are still ISA machines. You can get good video in them. I mean, we have some machines like that have 16-bit Orchid Pro Designer 2S card, which was pretty popular. And those guys can do 320 by 240, 16-bit graphics at like 24 FIPS pretty well. And it was actually quite surprising when I was noticing that that was possible. Other sort of issues you're going to come across is, and I've been touching on it a bit, is you're going to make trade-offs between your quality of your presentation and selling into what a low-end computer owner has. So basically, one of those issues is your tech support. You're going to have to consider like how much tech support can you have with your product. I mean, if you can have a lot or you have a lot of products out there and you can concentrate your tech support, you're a lot better off than a single guy who's like trying to do tech support with his staff of 4 or 5 people for a single application, because they can spread out that knowledge across multiple applications. So basically, what I'm not going to cover today is things that are already covered in some pretty excellent books out here. Jan Ozer has this book, Video Compression for Multimedia. He goes into a lot of issues about data rates and image quality, and basically he capture cards and some things like that. And he uses some pretty language that's pretty easy for most anyone to understand, even if they're not like really hardware literate and things like that. So like a graphics designer can read through this and actually get useful information out of it. Another pretty good book is these guys, Nels Johnson, How to Digitize Video. And he talks a lot about how to digitize video for QuickTime, various hardware that you can use to perform that task. And it's a pretty good book. Another book, which more entry level, but it has some cool tools bundled with it on a CD-ROM, is QuickTime, the official guide for Macintosh users. And it's kind of a misnomer because it has a lot of really good points for like authoring for cross-platform movies. So I'm not going to cover in detail what these books cover. It's like something I recommend you buying some for yourself and looking through them. The next step was basically, I'm going to go back to the presentation to the user and what sort of things you can do and what sort of design constraints I think are reasonable for a number of applications. So the first thing really is choose your frame rate. And it's going to change, like, that's one of the most significant factors in the video presentation other than just the size of the video itself. 24 FIPS is the film standard. I mean, you don't really need to do 30 FIPS for most applications. It's like, I've been there, it's interesting, but it doesn't really get me any more than 24 FIPS, and I'd rather use the bandwidth to increase the quality of my video. Also, you need to choose the right codec or the right compression technology. Different scenes have different quality constraints. Like, if you want titles on your application and then you want like moving graphics and video and natural scenes and things like that, you want different codecs for those jobs. And QuickTime lets you use more than one codec in the same video track. So basically, you can use the graphics compressor, the RLE compressor, for doing your titles and having them look really good. And then you can switch over to a Cinepack or an Indio or something like that and do your natural scenes with live video and things like that. The only consideration, though, for putting multiple codecs in the same track is you have to do it, all the images have to be the same dimensions as each other. That's a QuickTime constraint that we should probably look at adjusting sometime, but for now, it's all images have to have the same physical dimensions. The next issue to consider is basically, since most of the PC users are, even if they have better capabilities, a lot of them are still using 256 colors. You need to worry about palettes. You need to get those in your movies, and you need to like optimize the palette usage for the content you're presenting at any given point in time. If you change your content, like you're going from a dark scene to a light scene with lots of bright colors, you may want a palette shift. If you're changing over between one video and another and they have like total different image quality, you'll definitely want to have a palette shift in there. On most PCs, you only have 236 colors to work with reliably. You can use more, but there are a lot of gotchas when you go out to use a lot of different video cards, and it's just like a whole thing that you'd rather not worry about. I mean, 236 works pretty well. It's enough colors for most content I've seen. If you like really need those extra 20, I mean, you can do it, but it's not where I would recommend putting your time and effort unless you really feel it's necessary for your content. The techniques we use for putting palettes on movies, we use tools like Debabbilizer and Make Movie Color Table, which comes on the QuickTime SDK. to add palettes to a movie. And basically these tools, they go through the entire movie or the entire sequence of frames you told them to and figure out, make a recommendation as the optimum palette. Our settings that we tend to use for our content, like what we'll be demoing here in 10 or 15 minutes, is we use 236 entries. We typically say to use median cut algorithm to get the colors in there, and to only scan through keyframes, because it turns out keyframes have most of the color information in them anyway, and you don't need to spend the time going through every frame of the movie to optimize your palette. Movie Player 2.0. That's a good tool to like make sure that as a quality check, you can open a movie under Movie Player 2.0 on a Mac and look to see if it has a palette attached to it. Sometimes you'll like get through your whole process and you'll find a movie doesn't have a palette, and it's like it doesn't look good on an 8-bit display unless you've actually like enabled that feature and done the quality checks to make sure it's actually really there for you. Another thing to note is like on QuickTime, none of QuickTime's codecs which support palettes and palletized video and dithering on 8-bit display devices, none of them have a performance loss from using that feature. I mean, it's pretty much free. You should just use it. And it'll help quite a bit. So the next part in a presentation to the user, I looked a bit about images and the size that you want to display to the user, is other considerations when you're actually compressing the content. And these are techniques we use like when we're making our videos for our demos here. Basically, we like keyframes at 1 to 2x the frame rate. More often, if you have more keyframes than that, you're using a lot of valuable bandwidth. There are times at which you want to do that, depending on your content, but it's like something you don't want to do unless you actually need to do it. Another thing to know about with frame sizes is, depending on the compressor you use, there are magic frame sizes that boost performance tremendously with QuickTime. Both Cinepack and Indio want an exact multiple of 4 horizontal and an exact multiple of 4 vertical. And if you don't use those, the difference in frame rate can be quite dramatic. I mean, you'll definitely see a difference if you go ahead and make your movie a multiple of 4 and 4 in each direction. Another important consideration, basically for the same reason, is some authoring tools, and I haven't identified any particular one because I haven't gone back that far, but I've certainly found movies out there that people had complained about the performance. And they're looking at these, and I look at this movie and I say, this movie is scaled, it's stretched. And stretching a movie, as a general rule, there's some special cases which are exceptions, but as a general rule, scaling the movie kills your performance. And it's quite dramatic, like 7x difference in frame rate for quite a few movies. QuickTime is optimized for 2x and half x cases, so if you want to stretch the movie to exactly twice its original size, or you want to put it at half of its original size, both of those features are supported by QuickTime. I believe like on QuickTime for Windows, the half x cases are supported on QuickTime 2.1, and we're starting our beta program on that pretty soon. I'm not quite sure when, but the half-x splits are in there, and that can help in quite a few ways. Basically, one of the interesting things about the half-x splits is it allows you to deliver good content to a higher-end machine and deliver the exact same movie to a lower-end machine, because if you in your application enable this half-x feature, you can scale the movie to half-x and actually play it very well on a lower-end machine. It's like increase your market potential quite a bit by having that sort of feature in your application. Another interesting codec that's pretty recent is TrueMotion and TrueMotion S. Has some different magic frame sizes, 2, 4, or 12, depending on your settings. They have various quality settings you can use for your content. And I think that their dialog boxes make you quite aware of what they're capable of on any particular thing. In terms of the Unity track matrix, the only way I know of to reliably check that right now, other than writing your own code to do it, is the tool called Dumpster. You can actually open up a a track, and you can look at the track matrix and see if the entries in it are 1, 1, and 1 on the diagonal. Any other entries, all the other entries should be 0. And the same applies to the movie matrix that the movie has attached to it. And if you just go through, and it's a pretty quick quality control check, open up the movie and check it and make sure. Be nice. Probably a reasonable opportunity there for someone to like write a tool that like does all sorts of quality checks for other people. That says, gee, this QuickTime movie may or may not work for the following reasons, may not work as you intend it to work. So I have a lot of material to cover, about halfway there on the video side, and then we have audio, and then we have some demos that put it all together and show you like what we've been talking about. Basically, the fourth tip is looking at more of the issues of the actual quality of the image and making sure that the images can compress well as look good. And oftentimes, people think it's hard to do both. There's certain things you can do that make it easier to have a high quality image that also compresses well and gives you good frame rates. With brightness and contrast, you need to compromise when you're making a cross-platform movie. And the basic reason for that is PCs and Macintosh have different ideas of what the 8-bit luminance levels mean. Most PCs out there are not corrected for the brightness, the linearity of the monitor and things like that. So on PCs in general, the image that you create will look much darker than it will on a Macintosh. It's the sort of problem like color sync and things like that want to solve as well. So basically, like a good strategy for creating a cross-platform movie is to increase the brightness to the point where it looks a little bit too bright on a Macintosh, and it's something that if the user doesn't like it, they'll twiddle their brightness knob. And by the same token, it will, if you raise the brightness, it'll be a little bit too dark on the PC, but it won't be a lot darker than it needs to be. And I've seen quite a number of titles that could benefit by brightening their images and taking advantage of higher quality images before they actually compress them. Adobe Premiere, as well as other products, have filters that you can apply to every frame in the movie that will increase the brightness of that frame as a kind of a pre-processing step in your video production. And one thing to use is the correct gamma factor for increasing the brightness with most of these filters is 0.7, which is like PCs are half as bright as a Macintosh, and it's like the square 1 over the square root of 2 or something like that. Fun number. So another consideration to think about when you're creating your content is how much there's issues like pixel rates. These can dramatically change your output frame rates as well. Images like talking heads have pretty low pixel rates, and they're a lot easier to deliver to your end user and have the quality that you want. The worst case for pixel rates is basically the width times the height times the frames per second, which with QuickTime for Windows applies to about 10% of the installed base, which means that they're not using optimized hardware access methods on the existing like QuickTime 2.01 for Windows. And 50% scaling, I think I covered that a little bit before, but 50% scaling reduces your pixel rate by a factor of 4, which can definitely increase your penetration into lower end machines. Another factor other than things like motion, which affect your video playback performance, is having a clean video source before you compress. And having a clean video source means something a little bit different than having an image that looks good. I mean, there's certain constraints that you have to look at that are interactions with the various compression techniques you're using. And so there's certain things to avoid based on which compression technique you're going to use. JPEG, which like a lot, if you have a 60 field capture board or a 30 frame per second capture board that's using motion JPEG, there are a lot of JPEG artifacts that don't work well with certain codecs like Indio and Cinepack. And you can adjust your content to avoid those sort of issues. And it takes like careful planning just from the start of your project to get the content in a form which is going to capture and compress well. Things to avoid for motion JPEG captured images. You want to avoid like closely spaced parallel lines. JPEG tends to block those out into really blocky pixels, and there's nothing that Cinepack or Indio can do for you after that because the information's gone. It's like you have to get it in your capture. You have to get a good capture first. And another thing to do, or not do, is I really wouldn't recommend using Cinepack or Indio as an intermediate form unless you have to. I mean, basically, if you're going to use those as an intermediate form and then recompress, chances are you're going to get some really nasty-looking artifacts that you may not notice right at first, but like they'll grow on you and you won't like them. And those are pretty much basically avoided. Like we tend to do everything all the way down to the final compression stage. We tend to do all of our edits and everything with the motion JPEG images or summaries of them. We also, like the motion JPEG, we also recommend like capturing and storing that at the highest data rate that you can afford. I mean, if 1 minute of video is going to take 2 gigabytes, but that's the 1 minute of video you have to have, you should have a 2 gig capture device that can stream that video in. I mean, it's like one of the cheapest things you can do to make your production better. I mean, otherwise, you're just going to use a lot of time. I mean, there's a time versus spending the money up front trade-off there to look at. Another codec which looks to be an up-and-coming contender for intermediate sort of production phase for your projects is TrueMotion. TrueMotion, at data rates comparable to motion JPEG, I've seen provides similar quality, and it has a different set of artifacts. So basically, it's like something to try at some point if you're having trouble with some of your JPEG content that may actually help you out in the long run. So the next thing I have is creating your video track and how you actually put the movie together. Like once you've done your final compress, or once you know what the final compress and edit's going to look like, you prefer not to have edits in your movie files for a production release. They can hurt the performance. They don't always hurt the performance, but they can. And it's just another thing to be aware of. It's like if you have an edit and for some reason a keyframe is somewhere outside of the edit, and those keyframes aren't part of the keyframe, and some of the intermediate frames aren't part of the part of the visible sequence of frames because of your edit, that'll cause some performance glitches. And those are good things to get rid of. It's like the start of an edit should be a keyframe in the final resultant file. For cross-platform movies, QuickTime 2.0 for Windows only supports one true video track. You can use a text track and a lower capacity of a video track, but it takes some work, and there's one good video track. Where I have check the authoring options that you have for your video, certain tools, and I found Premiere does this to you sometimes. If you don't composite the movie correctly, it will output multiple tracks. And on QuickTime for Macintosh, if you're previewing it there, it'll look fine. But once you final compress it and take it over to QuickTime for Windows, those multiple tracks are going to hurt you. You're going to get white frames in the middle of your video, or black frames, whatever the background color for that track was, at the points that the layers weren't composited with each other. So that's just another thing to check. And a good tool to check that is Dumpster or Movie Player. Look in Movie Player in the Get Info box and see if it only has one video track, and you should be okay. A couple other things to do is with filtering and post-processing that help you compress better. Certain filters to remove video noise, like speckles and things like that, those help out the compressors quite a bit and help your data rate. one thing that will do that, it may not be the recommended format for your content, but it's just to apply a Gaussian blur over the whole frame across the entire movie. It'll reduce the speckling. It may not provide quite the effect you want, but it's one method of doing it that works reasonably often. Averaging frames when downsampling. I don't know of a tool that actually does this for you, but it's a cool thing. And been played with a bit. It's probably an opportunity. Like if some of you are working on tools for digital video production people, it'd be a good tool to have out there, especially like going from 30 FIPS to 24 FIPS and things like that, and getting rid of some of the telecine problems, things like that. So basically, the other thing, a whole other area to look at that's further up the process and probably closer to where you're actually planning your production is you have to have the quality in there from the start. I mean, if you don't have good video sources, you're not going to get good captures, and you won't get good compresses, and things won't be as ideal as they could be. So certain things to be aware of, like planning your scenes, like with the lighting, really good idea to saturate your lighting like all the way and take a look at it on a vector scope. Make sure it's like peaked out as much as it can be for the portions of the scene that are the brightest, because the more information you have in your video signal, the better the chances are you can actually get that information into the computer in digital form. And once it's in the computer, you can do all the processing to like strip away the information you don't want, reduce the brightness, increase the brightness, things like that alter the information. But it's like a good idea to have the best information possible as early as possible in the whole process of creating your video. So a couple other things to look at. Textures, and these textures cause JPEG artifacts, which best are avoided. High frequency random patterns, like if you're shooting a scene that has a lot of grass on a bright sunny day, I haven't seen a capture board yet that will do that well on the motion JPEG side at a reasonable data rate. Same thing goes with like the high frequency parallel lines, carpets, people with pinstripe shirts, things like that. I mean, you get blocky artifacts quite often. Screen wire, things like that. Grids like on the side of the computer where it has vents and things like that, like regular parallel line patterns. Try not having them in your scenes when you're doing the capture and when you're doing your videotaping in the first place. It'll help you out. Another thing to avoid is random motion, like shooting a video from a moving vehicle. It's really hard. It doesn't capture or compress well either. Things to have there like tripods, and if you really like don't want to go the whole way, some sort of basic image stabilization will help you out a bit there. Like with your consumer grade video cameras, something with an image stabilizer will actually help quite a bit for that sort of content. That's pretty much all I have on digital video stuff. We're going to get into later like how we put it all together. But for now, we're going to do digital audio stuff and things to be aware of when you're making cross-platform movies. And Tony Knight is going to make a presentation on how to resample your audio.
Entirely too kind. What I'm going to talk about is resampling your audio and why you need to do it. A couple of years ago when the Mac Quadras came out, they were excellent machines to capture audio on, but they had an 8-bit sound card that sampled audio in at 22.254 kilohertz, which was fine for playing back content on a Mac. However, if you want to deliver your audio on a PC, generally the native sound rates for most PC sound cards are 22.050. So what do you do with that extra slop? Well, when you're playing that audio on a PC, generally it has to be resampled down to 22050, and generally what that'll do is that'll cause some performance problems. So overall, we find that it's best to resample your audio at 22050 if you have an older machine with an 8-bit sound card. Now, all new Power Macs that come with 16-bit sound cards are at a native sound rate that is a multiple of 44.1. So if you're bringing in your sound and you're downsampling it to the 22K range, it's going to be 2250 naturally. But if you have a machine that has an 8-bit sound card, you should be aware of this problem, and you should resample your audio, and that will give you much better performance on both platforms. So before I show you how to do that, I'm going to do a quick plug for QuickTime Quick Facts. And what this is sort of our way of distributing information to you in a very clean and quick manner. And I want you to notice the frame there, tips and tricks on making excellent cross-platform movies. Now the next 14 slides that I'm going to show you are actually taken from a movie that is going to be distributed online on our website and in different places. So when you see the QuickTime Quick Facts, it's generally going to have some good information for you to use in a movie format, so you can just play the movies and go through them one frame at a time and get the information off of them. So this information is going to be available for you, so if you don't want to write it down, that's cool. Okay, now there are a number of tools that will allow you to resample your audio. I can name 3 just right off the bat: Movie Player 2.0, Sound Edit 16, and Adobe Premiere will all let you resample an audio track or an audio movie from one rate to another. So for this demonstration, I use Sound Edit 16. Sound Edit 16 is actually pretty nice because what it'll let you do is it will let you resample the movie within the movie and let you export it as a movie. And you'll see as I go through the slide why that's useful. So first thing to do is to, there's my plug. First thing to do is to check to see if your audio, if you're not sure if your audio is at 22254, what you can do is you can open up the movie player and you can actually check that in the Get Info dialog. So here's our wonderful 1984 movie, and I can see that that was brought in and it's 22.254 kilohertz, and I want to distribute this, and that's not good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the movie in Sound Edit 16, and it's very easy to do that. I'm going to select Edit in Sound Edit 16, and that will let me access the audio. It'll actually let me open up the movie and show me the frames for the audio, which is kind of neat. Okay, in the lower left-hand corner, I'm going to actually see the audio rate, which is 8 bits at 22254. I don't like that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all, and under the sound menu, I'm going to select sound format. Sound format gives me a lot of options as to what I want to sample my audio to. So I'm going to select 22050 from the sample rate option pop-down. It's going to give me a little dialog that's going to tell me how smaller the file got. Okay. After I resample the audio, after it chunks away, I'm going to notice that it's changed in the lower right-hand corner to 8 bits 22050. Okay. The step that I didn't show you is that you have to actually save that part of the movie out. So what you're going to do is you're going to save the audio part out to another file. Then what you're going to do is you're going to basically launch Movie Player 2.0. And what you have to do is you have to get rid of the old audio track. So it's a really simple way of doing that. You select Delete Tracks. You select the soundtrack and just whap it. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring back in my resampled audio track, open it up. I'm going to do a select all on the audio track. Then this is the part that's kind of tricky. What I have to do is I have to go back to my original movie, and I have to make sure that I'm at time 0. And there's a really quick and down and dirty easy way to do that by holding down the Option and the left arrow. That'll take me to the very beginning of the video track. Then what I do is I hold down my Option key, go to the Edit menu, and select Add. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add that track in, and this will ensure that my audio and my video are synced exactly right. Last thing, that's basically the last step, and the very last thing to do is to flatten, or to save the movie and flatten it to make sure that it is cross-platform capable. What I'm going to go ahead and do now, that's basically the last part of resampling audio. I'm going to pass back over to Paul, and he's going to talk about sound samples. Somebody's going to talk about sound samples. Peter's going to talk about sound samples.
Hey, it wouldn't be a QuickTime presentation if I didn't show my face for a minute. Yeah. Thanks, Tony. So, data rates, one of the things you want to consider is how good quality sound you need. At 22050, which is the rate that Tony has now told you how to get to, 16-bit stereo will give you very good quality sound for presentations, but you might want to think about compressing that down using IMA compression. They'll give you 4-to-1 compression on your audio, so you get very good quality. But just for some examples, even if you don't compress it, because there's some performance issues with compressed sound, at 200K a second, which was what Paul was talking about as a good delivery rate for Windows, you still have 112K left for video. And if you do compress it, you have 178K per second left for video. So you can get really good quality and still have good quality sound. And believe it or not, if you have excellent quality sound, it makes your video look better. So, okay, so there was a demo that was going to go here, but we're going to blow by that for a moment. And just briefly talk about the fact that while most of this presentation has been about sound and video, that there are lots of other things that QuickTime can do and QuickTime for Windows can do. So you can take music, MPEG text, and combine those with your other data types and still get very interesting things out of it. The other thing lots of people don't know about QuickTime for Windows is that it supports quick draw pictures. It doesn't support every picture, but if you have QuickTime compressed data in the picture, it will work on Windows. You just call draw picture, which is what you would have done on your Macintosh. And that way you can have very small pictures on there, and that works in Director and things like that as well. Other thing is the tools situation. I don't think the multimedia tools situation can be or will ever be described as great, but there's some pretty good things out there. If you're working with video, you want to make sure you have around a copy of Adobe Premiere. You want to have a copy of Movie Shop with all of its warts, and Convert to Movie, which is equally ugly. These all have interesting tools in them for working with video, and you sort of have to just experiment a bit and find out what works for you. I get a call at least once a month from somebody who has 3 hours of video to compress for this product they have to get out next week, and they're just out of luck. If you've never done it, you're screwed. You've got to actually take some time and learn how to do this. This is not easy. Audio, Sound Edit 16 is a great program. Audio Shop is great. Sound Converter is right now the only game in town for making IMA files, so you want to have that around. And then there's the unsupported QuickTime tools. So once you've got your sound and your audio together, you want to bring them together into a QuickTime movie and get that movie just right. And the tools you want to have are Movie Player 2.0, which is much more than just a player right now. It has lots of editing functionality. Single Fork Flattener creates a single fork file for use on Mac and Windows, which is laid out optimally so it'll open as fast as possible from a CD. Combo Walker does everything. It's the Swiss Army knife of movie making tools. If it works for you, great. If not, too bad. Dumpster is also great if you want to look inside a movie and see what the data structures are like and what it's doing. It's great, and it's also very confusing, but if you read inside Mac QuickTime and you understand it, then you can probably get some good results. And then finally, there's delivery tools. When you're going to deliver, you're not just going to deliver a movie usually, but an experience, so you have to choose what you're going to use as your tool. The most popular one these days is Macromine Director. It works very well, but it's not for everyone. Apple Media Tool is much less complex. Doesn't give you as many choices, but if you don't need the unbelievable power of Macromine Director, you can get very, very good results with Apple Media Tool. The C programming language is always available to you, both platforms. Excellent results when used by a skilled professional. Visual Basic is available on Windows, and Microsoft continually promises it on Macintosh. Go ask them when. M-Factory is a really cool new product from a small startup company that just moved to the Bay Area from Canada. I really recommend that you check it out. They're doing a really fabulous job with some things. It's cross-platform. HyperCard is Macintosh only today. Maybe someday. They got Power Mac up this week, so maybe one day Windows. And Toolbook if you need something like HyperCard on Windows, but it'll never match the real thing. I'm going to turn it back to Paul. I just want to say to you guys that you should really notice one change this year about the QuickTime for Windows presentation, which is that Tom, for example, Tom Schmeidalko, the marketing person, is really a Windows person. It's not a Mac guy who's bitter that he has to work on QuickTime for Windows. And I think that's a really good sign that we're moving in the right direction. So I'm going to pass things back to Paul now.
Do you have a CD in here? Hi. Basically, so we're running short on time because I was talking too long. But I wanted to show you like a couple of the movies we had done for today using basically the same techniques as we were describing to you earlier. This is a 24 FIPS 320 by 240 pixel movie. And it's at a data rate of approximately 200K per second. And it has 8-bit 22050 audio. And basically, here we go. And this is a 1x size. Let's see how many people appreciate Madonna, but if we could have that on the other screen as well. And this is content you can deliver to people on a 486 or better machine without a whole lot of effort. I mean, they're the things that you have to think about when you're making your movie. the other thing we can do with this, if a person has a somewhat higher end machine, like this machine here on the desk here is a 486-66 with a local bus video card, and it does pretty well. And this movie, 200K per second, is currently playing off the CD-ROM for those of you who can actually see the CD-ROM on the left side of the stage. But the other thing we can do here is we can double the size of this, and it still plays very well on this machine. And if we could get the audio boosted up a bit, and then, okay, that's enough. So basically, this movie has another couple features that we did with the codecs, and that some of the scenes were harder than others to compress well. And we actually have, well, Tony can talk about the process a bit, but I believe we have different frame rates at different parts of the movie to deal with some scenes, just like the spinning cube that just went by, because at a higher frame rate, you're trading off your quality for your data rate. And we wanted this to be a better quality image at that portion. So basically, that's it for a digital movie made with these techniques. We have another demo here, which kind of ties together a lot of different pieces of QuickTime for Windows and QuickTime, which is the application. This is Spinal Tap from the Voyager company. And basically, on one CD-ROM, they've used the IMA compressed audio. And on one 650 megabyte CD-ROM, they've delivered 6 hours of content. They have an hour and a half of video. They had to make some trade-offs there. To get an hour and a half of video, they had to compress it quite a bit. They took some hits in the image quality that it still looks pretty good to me. But they also put in 3 different audio tracks. They have 2 audio tracks, which are 11 kilohertz, 8-bit mono, and then they have another audio track, which is 22 kilohertz, 16-bit stereo that's IMA compressed. And basically, they have this cool user interface that lets you switch the audio track as the movie's playing. Each of these buttons on the screen, the power button, the help button, the soundtrack control button, the volume control knob, all of these buttons on the screen are actually QuickTime movies. And that's kind of an interesting way to put the graphics into their application, because like the volume control knob has 12 different positions. So they just have a movie that has 12 different images in it, and they use QuickTime to draw that image on the screen for them. If we could get the audio on this machine. So this user interface shows a couple of cool features. They allow you to scale the image down for a lower end machine. They allow you to scale it up for a user who can deal with that on their hardware. I can switch the volume here, back up to 11. I can switch to the band. The band is talking a bit about the video. We could raise the audio rate a bit here. Okay, the crew. I'm just not finding a good spot in the movie. But the other cool thing this has a text track, which has all of the script for the entire movie in it, and some other interesting things. So basically, I can say, go find a word in a particular scene, and this word appears in a particular scene. It's not spoken, but they still indexed it. Okay, so this is, now they have a map that lets you go to any different spot in the movie based on where they were in their road tour. Let's hire some dwarves or something like that. And that's their version of Stonehenge. I mean, that's the full-size thing that's prop for their stage. They also have a user interface that has snapshots, like if you want to see different people or different songs, you can just jump right there in the movie and just play it. So the other scene that people seem to like quite a bit is 11. We'll just go right there with the text search feature. And so basically, I mean, this application is an interesting way to put all of these different things for your production together for the end user experience. And this scene also shows some of the artifacts I was talking about with JPEG, like the the parallel lines here, they're kind of blocky at various points. I don't know if you can see that on the projection screen. It's just one of those JPEG artifacts that they didn't get rid of because they couldn't once the information was gone. That pretty much wraps it up. We can have some questions and answers outside because there's another session in here like right after us. And Tom.
Hello. Just wanted to do a really quick survey. I mean, how many of you here are using QuickTime for Windows? QuickTime for Windows 2.0? QuickTime for Windows 2.01? QuickTime for Windows 2.02? Okay. How many people are they working on or planning on Windows 95 titles? Good. How about NT titles? Okay, that's great.
Just wanted to say that the runtime version of QuickTime for Windows 2.0